We're joined now by Isaac Cohen. He's president and CEO of the International Business Development Company in Reyes. He's also a former director of the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
So Mexico's president calls this a win-win-win for all three nations. Do you think this makes all sides happy?
Well, as they say, all is well if it ends well. It didn't start very well. And I think that the process of negotiation has been a bit complicated. And the result reveals that there was an effort to find common ground and finally to get an agreement where everybody wins. And I think that that was accomplished.
What do you think finally sealed the deal? I mean, there was a talk about Canada here at the end, that it could take longer. What do you think wrapped it all up?
Well, there are several reasons. I think the main reason is the fact that this is a $1 trillion deal. And several interests are at stake, and very powerful interests, particularly in the United States. Let me give you the example of agriculture, for instance. Farmers in the United States were very concerned that this was not going to work. And of course, the automobile industry was very concerned as well. So when you have groups like those questioning the position of the administration, because the administration was espousing a very protectionist stance. And the farmers and industrialists were not in agreement with that position. So that's the kind of strength, I think, that pushed the agreement into the negotiating table and finally to the end.
We're seeing a leadership change in Mexico. A new president will soon be in place. We have U.S. midterm elections coming up in about a month from now. How much of this was political versus that this is a 24-year-old deal that needed to be revamped?
Correct. Well, starting by Mexico, you know, I have to give a lot of credit to the Mexican president and the Mexican negotiating team. They were very patient and they were very persistent. And they didn't lose control of their emotions, and consequently, they were able to come to an agreement. To me, it was impressive the way they operated, on the one hand. On the other hand, you have the fact that the United States was trying to modify certain rules that could be accomplished. For instance, the 75% rule on automobiles, where you have to use parts that belong to the agreement in order to have an automobile recognized as originary from the agreement. I think that that was impressive, and the United States accomplished that. So there were some accomplishments for the U.S., some accomplishment for Mexico, and now Canada.
This is not the only trade issue that the United States is dealing with. Of course, they're also working with the European Union, and of course, we can't forget about China. Is there anything that can be learned from this negotiation that can be applied or learned from the other side in dealing with the U.S.?
Yes, you're absolutely right. And the elections in the United States are coming, and there's probably a change in the legislative component of the U.S. government. And you have to take that into consideration, for, as you say. Well, the other thing is, I think you have to persist. This posturing, I have to call it that way, you know, the protectionist posturing that you see from the administration, we know that is one part of the administration. They are in the White House, so that's important. But there are other sectors of the U.S. government that are interested in getting these agreements through, because the United States is still the biggest economy in the world. This economy cannot be closed for business.
All right. How soon before we can see some consumers feel the effect of this? It's be signed if nothing else happens at the end of the year. We see these changes go into effect at the 2019?
Very quickly, yes. I think we're going to see already, for instance, the concern by the farmers that some of the products were going to be literally lost because they couldn't export them. That's going to be solved very quickly. And we're going to see an increase in the prices of automobiles. That's one thing that the consumer is going to have to pay for. But for the sake of the agreement as a whole, as I say again, a $1 trillion sized agreement, I think that's positive.
That's a big one. Automobiles. All right.
Absolutely.
Mr. Cohen, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.